Welcome to our presentation today, The Collaborative Future of Service Management. And I'd like to start with a statement. Service management hasn't changed in over 20 years. The way that we work in a tiered structure has been the same, certainly since I started inside service management. And we cannot continue to make savings or bring more efficiency by working in the same way. There's only so much you can cut, refine, automate, and improve by using the same model that we use to provide that service. It's a diminishing return, and we need to look at a new approach, whilst looking at options to refine what we do today. Before we start, just a little bit of background about who I am. So I started over 25 years ago working for the service desk at the NHS before moving to an investment bank where I worked as a team leader running financial systems. And then set up a company called Clear Dynamics, and we worked on real-time payment systems before merging with Panacea, where we grew the turnover and focused on service management, consultancy and integration. And just over 5 years ago, we merged with KTSL, and from there we've continued to grow and develop new strategies for service management. And that's really been my focus over the time, to look at how we can constantly refine, improve and bring new ideas to the service management portfolio. So what are we going to look at today? We'll look at what service management means to us now and how it started to change with the rise of automation, self-service and AI. And where this might take the traditional view of service management ticket management by reducing tickets before they even arrive by looking at trends and leveraging the automation. We'll then take a look at how these technologies can enable us to make service management more collaborative, bringing about a major shift in the way we think about providing the services and doing more with the same. We'll then end with a case study, where this has already shown real value at one of our clients. So let's start by looking at service management now. What do we look for in a good service management operating model? First of all, it's important for us to have people-centric conversations. Users are at the heart of everything we do. We want to serve our end customer, whether that's an internal user, an end customer, or another organization that we deal with. We need to focus on self-service, making sure our user experience is good, making sure our workforce can be mobilized, can have access to that data wherever they need it. We want to focus on shifting left, giving more power to end users to solve and help themselves, or have our end customers have a better user experience by accessing a up-to-date and important knowledge base. We want to try and remove cost from our business whilst retaining that good level of service, and we want to increase our productivity. And we're doing that across the various different ITIL disciplines: incident, problem, knowledge and request, all reactive in the way that we deal with our end customers. We might want to look at collaboration channels. How do we engage our end users? It's all part of our core ITSM. We then need to look at how our systems are managed. So within our system-centric management, we want visibility, clarity, control. We want to be able to de-risk critical changes by understanding exactly what the potential impact is, therefore minimizing any risk to our end customers or to our business. And we want to be able to drive DevOps at scale to give us a competitive advantage over our competition. And things that are important within that sphere are having an accurate and up-to-date and controlled configuration management database, so we understand what risks we could be bringing in. We understand what we need to test. We need a robust service catalog because we need to make sure that our customers and our end users can get what they need quickly and accurately, and so we understand who we impact when we change things. We need a structured and detailed asset management so we can understand what's happening within our business when things change or move. We can have a clear understanding when we migrate to the cloud, for example. What do we need to migrate? What could that cost us? And we need to be able to control change. We need to understand what that risk is. We don't need to throttle it. We need to make sure we understand the risk, but allow DevOps to flourish. We need to make sure that we bring enough in to stay ahead. And finally, We have business and enterprise improvements. We need to share data with the business. It needs to be accurate and quick and available. We want to get things where they go straight to fix. So we're not waiting for things to happen. We're not reliant on delays. We want ever increasing and improving service levels because that gives us a shorter time to value. And it will allow us to support business growth, where service management is providing the platform and the capability for the business to grow at scale by making the IT seamless. And things like integration, automation, and most importantly, innovation is core to this. And that drives the continuous improvement that we want to look for within our service management operating model. Now let's look at the processes that are managed by IT service management. IT service management has a wide remit across the business and forms an important function. For example, we need to qualify what happens from a compliance and quality standpoint, ensuring that SIAM standards are controlled, ensuring that our service providers and the management of them fall under scrutiny, making sure that we have service and supplier quality, and making sure that we have regulatory standards that allow us to conform to compliance. We also have to govern. So we need to make sure that our service catalogue is managed, that our service levels are adhered to, that we have service level design and review to constantly look at how we're performing to what the business needs. And we need to also provide financial management support to understand the cost of IT. We also need to provide assurance across the core processes, such as incident management, major issues, request management, ensuring people get what they want in a timely manner, problem management, control things that are happening within the business, and access management to make sure that people get access to the right things when they need them in a secure manner. We also need to detect when there's security and quality issues, for example, incident and event monitoring, proactive monitoring, forensic analysis of issues that have happened, and security assurance and accreditation. We also need to manage any change and ensure continuity across the business. In our core processes such as change management, service and asset management, release and deployment, availability, capacity, continuity, and knowledge, making sure that everyone understands what's happening within IT. We also provide a number of roles in order to do this. And starting from the top of our IT end user services, which are directly in touch with the business. Things like end user support, self-service, our desk, on-site support, key user support, providing services such as workstations, voice, mobile, print, access, collaboration. All of that sits at the top of the role. Below that, we need to provide our infrastructure services. So our data center, our cloud, our servers that the applications need to run on, our platforms that our end users consume, how they're accessed across the network, the security around that, and the operations that maintain that. Then our IT professional services, so our consultancy, are working with our end users to bring on new services. Our IT procurement and vendor selection, our development, bringing forward those new innovations to our business, our operations support, and our training, both of our customers, but also our internal IT and business users. And then the governance that wraps that. So our service and vendor governance, business continuity planning, the integration that's so core to our business across our vendors, ensuring that everything is harmonized and that we have control. Our change advisory board to manage risk, but not at the expense of innovation. And our governance group to review our service performance and making sure we're making changes both tactically and strategically to improve the quality of our service. And then our governance group to review the status and align the expectations of the business to IT. What I've then done is taken all of those points and tried to distill that down into a much simpler diagram to summarize the service management functions we've just discussed. So what you'll see at the top is the channels that we have. So effectively how we deliver our service. So whether that is in person, through social media, through a call, through email, chat, or portal. That's the typical ways that we engage. We then have our tiers. So first of all, you're likely to get a virtual agent or an ITSM tool or the desk, or maybe call a piece of automation. But they're normally our first touch points. Then below that, we have our experts. That's our support function, our key users within our business. And then below that, we have our service delivery organization and then our development team that's bringing those new exciting developments out through our delivery organization and through our support function to the business. And then on the right hand side, we have our service integration. So how we manage that service quality, both within our internally and with our service providers. And this diagram is important because we're going to come back to this throughout the presentation about how IT service management is provided and how we can start to change this and move the dial on how we provide this service. Now let's look at what's already starting to change. AI is already starting to help us improve the way we provide service management services. It provides a cost-effective way to understand what is happening and help us deflect or provide resolutions to issues. Let's start with deflection. AI can help us using natural language processing and reading the inbound requests and incidents from our channels to direct calls from inception to the right automation or the right part of service delivery. By deflecting that call to the right place and or providing a solution directly, we can allow the end user to get what they need much more quickly, or deflect the call entirely by calling a level of automation. For example, if an end user could access the portal or a chat channel with a question around access to an application, AI could format the input in a structured way and call the automation to add that permission, or create the right request for approval and send the user back an article on how to add the permission themselves. It can help us therefore start to deflect calls away from the traditional tiers. Let's look at trends. AI can tell which problems are trending, allowing your delivery and development organizations to solve the right problems or intercept an issue before it grows. The ability for AI to read large volumes quickly can allow it to understand when a trend is different to the normal operational practices, or that a particular problem may actually be wider than you think because you are not restricting your reporting to just categorization. This could be a huge time saving for teams to understand what to focus on and where to make improvements. This can range in value from understanding that you have a recent spike in Teams issues due to an extended Teams rollout, and that actually 2 to 3 new knowledge articles would prevent this volume, or noticing that you've got 8 to 10 repeat incident types that are coming in, which could be moved to the self-service portal. It can even be used to spot areas where if you actually improve the data, you could reuse or build a new piece of automation to take away that issue entirely. In this, AI is all about helping you focus your effort on what's important at that moment. The last area we'll cover today on AI is knowledge. AI can help find either gaps in knowledge, where repeat questions are being asked, or help bridge the gap between the way a user describes a problem or asks for help and a corresponding knowledge article could be sent back. The fact it can read and digest the description or summary means it can help show how an end user is describing something instead of purely the way we believe they'll describe something. This will allow an end user to find the right help more quickly, with a greater chance that that user can then self-serve. Within this, we can take steps to improve. So aside from AI, service management is also evolving in other areas. And these steps to improve will vary between organizations, but most organizations are already looking at how they can improve the function. And these steps often cross all the tiers within our structure. And you can pick and choose the right step at the right time for your organization, allowing you to grow gradually. So let's take a look at some of these steps. Let's start with catalog management. This is important because if you can offer the right services to your business or your end customers and do it in such a way that is easy to navigate, you can take a huge amount of load away from the service desk, from that top tier that sits within service management. And as we've spoken about, you can try and find how people describe things and how they order things. You can make sure your catalogue is easy to use and straightforward. And you can make sure that it's linked to services that you provide and knowledge that you have. And we'll come on to those. But it's usually the front door to what IT service management does. So it's very important to make sure that your catalogue management is up to date and it's under control. You might want to look at your CMDB and how accurate it is and where you can improve it. Do you go all the way from a server right up to a business process? How do you maintain it? How do you make sure that it's providing the right information to the business and isn't simply a store of how IT fits together? Because the CMDB needs to be much more than that. It needs to be able to tell you that if you do something, you could impact a business process, or it needs to let you understand the cost of providing a service to your business. The CMDB is a lot wider than just a collection of related things. It should be there to drive change forward. It should be able to tell you your exact cost of, say, migrating to the cloud or bringing in a new service online. It's much wider than purely a store of assets. And that brings me on to knowledge. You should have an accurate knowledge management. We talk about KCS, which is a way of managing knowledge, but it's important that you have knowledge not just for your end users, but also for your internal IT team, so they understand what they need to do. So you can manage team changes. You can manage anything that comes into the business because you have a structure for documenting and providing that out so people understand as soon as they see an article. Oh, okay, it's the same format as the other one I used. I can follow this. It's in a language that I understand. I've seen this before. Automation, which so many businesses have been looking at, but the more automation you can bring in, the more you can allow end users or customers to get what they need more quickly. The more time you can free up from your IT professionals by automating the things that they don't need to do manually. So it's something that you can bring into the business. Bringing in proactive problem management. So understanding that something is going to fail before it happens and then taking the right steps to stop that failure. And that brings you into this almost panacea of self-healing, where you understand that something's going to fail and then you automatically do something to stop that failure. Or you solve an end user's problem before they even know about it. So you may have some monitoring on that laptop. You know that that laptop is running out of memory, but you know there's an application that that end user hasn't touched for the last 25 minutes and what they've got in it is saved. So you just bring that application down to free up that memory and stop that crash. Things like that, all the way through to automatic server provisioning. But they all fall under this category of self-healing. We then want to be able to control the channels that we offer the end customer. End customers want more and more channels. Their expectation of the way that they can interact with us has changed from being able to use social media or chat channels to talk to us now. It's not something that we need to force anymore. People want to communicate in that way, and we need to be able to adapt to support it. Through to risk management, controlling the risk within our business so we can act more quickly. And that brings me on to DevOps. Organizations are focusing massively on DevOps because it's what allows them to have a competitive advantage, whether it's what makes somebody go to one bank over another or one commercial outlet over another. DevOps is so key because the customer expectation is so much higher. We have to constantly evolve and we have to do it quickly. But for a business, we've got to make sure we do that and contain the risk, because if we do something too fast and then we cause a failure, the reputational damage to that is very hard to get back. So it's making the fine balance between the risk and the speed. So they're the steps that you can take. And each organization will be on a different part of that journey, and different steps will be important for you at any different point in time. So it's something that you can look at which one makes the most sense to do, or which one you've already started to look at. So now let's look at a very different approach. And what we're going to do is we're going to consider what would happen if our organization became blended. So let's go back to our diagram of how we provide service management typically today. And we've talked about the steps that we can do to start to improve it. So we're going to bring into our picture our AI layer and our collaborative analytics, which we spoke about in terms of managing our deflection and our trends, We're going to bring that into the top layer. Then what we're going to do is we're going to change our bottom layer. And we are going to move all of our IT services into one block. And we're going to bring in this section called skills and solutions. So actually what we're doing is we're taking anything that comes through the top funnel, but rather than funneling them through a set of tiers, our desk, our support services, and our delivery organization, we're just going to look for the best skill or the best solution from our entire IT department. We're effectively providing a collaborative service management to our business through the skills and solutions pool. So we're not zeroing people down to one skill. We're making people more than just an assignment group, because in many cases they will have the capacity to do more. We're going to create a pool to pick from. And this can enable us to reduce cost. It can enable us to bring up proactivity. It can allow us to improve our knowledge base by getting skills and knowledge from across our IT business. And therefore, we've got more opportunity to solve more people's problems more quickly. And the whole goal of this is about allowing IT to collaborate with the business through these new channels, through this new social media way of talking and the way of engaging our users and our customers and providing a blended service to them. Because the issue with the top-down process is you are always constrained by the resources that you have. And if you bring in a new service, you need to go to the market and purchase a new person to go and provide that service. And IT people could be expensive, but you may already have those skills somewhere else within your business that you can reuse, and therefore allowing you to reduce that overall cost. And that's really the goal here. It's all around providing that blended service to everybody that needs to consume it. And finally, we're going to bring in DevOps. By bringing DevOps into our circle, we can work closely to bring innovation straight to the business and allow them to become part of our blended pool. We're collaborating between the DevOps, the business, and providing those new solutions straight through our channels to allow our business to consume it quickly, and by managing the risk as we spoke about earlier. And we're now going to talk about why that makes sense and how we can make that work. Let's start talking about crowdsourcing. So you may have heard this term or phrase. It's certainly becoming much more prevalent outside of IT, but also in the way that we source projects. And I'm going to focus on an academic study that recently came out called The Crowd as a Collaborative Network. And in that, we found that workers on crowdsourcing platforms started to self-organize, and they started to collaborate organically, even without corporately endorsed social networks. So despite the fact that workers were assumed to be working independently or autonomously on a task, grassroots networks of support and advice started to emerge. And whether it was to share information about upcoming opportunities or to answer queries related to specific tasks, collaboration, it seemed, was an inevitable part of work. And the study concluded that effective crowd working systems actually need to factor that in. People like to help other people. And it's something that has become much more apparent due to some of the recent changes we've had to do within the way that we work. And when they operate well within organizations, platforms like Slack and Teams reduce much of the inefficiencies of other ways of working, such as email or conference calls or face-to-face meetings. But as well as the efficiency, they also serve an important social function for workers. They're like virtual water coolers for discussing specific business issues or for team building through shared experiences. So those sort of inane conversations sometimes on Teams, they're actually more important than you think, particularly at the moment where our working world has shifted and changed. We need to encourage that collaboration and encourage that crowdsourcing. We're pulling our knowledge in from other areas where previously we might not have done. And this is mostly based around social networks. So enterprise social networks are now an everyday part of organizations. and we can migrate service management functions to those channels. And by doing that, we're able to unleash the potential of our employees, whilst reducing the risks that that type of flatter, faster communication can bring into a business. The rise of these enterprise social networks are one of the key workplace stories over the last few years. Even before COVID, by March 2019, 500,000 organizations around the world were already using Teams, and that included 91 of the 100 of the Fortune 100, which isn't bad for an application that was only launched in 2017. Rapid growth in 2 years. And this has accelerated even faster since we were forced to change our working patterns. We have the rise of corporate social media, such as Facebook Workplace, Yammer. And what was a trend in 2019 has become a must-have by 2021. Flatter hierarchies and increased remote working have created demand for applications that enable that sort of real-time collaboration, regardless of our physical location. But they are also now having to fulfill a deeper social need among workers. And this is around allowing DIY service management, but retaining control. And some of the business issues around enterprise social networks is the fact that it doesn't work with the traditional remit of service management. For example, problems installing a new software or working out how to log time in a new system. Actually, they enable users to offer peer-to-peer solutions, whether it's links to a third party or whether it's a piece of knowledge that sits within another team. And this is empowering for employees and could reduce pressure on IT help desks. But it's also potentially unsettling for organizations that are used to top-down control. Or in a worst case scenario, it could be disruptive to core business functions. So we have to reconcile the risk with the opportunity. And as we mentioned, one way to do this is to leverage AI as a participant and a moderator, ensuring that where solutions exist, it intercepts the conversation and ensures that the user gets the approved solution. The second is through collaboration itself. By widening the remit of the underlying IT base, we allow more IT resources to collaborate with the business straight away. And this is often an approach that we've seen in human resources, where a combination of collaboration and governance allows for a wider sharing of information. So let's take a look at this in practice. And let's look at how utilizing our wider skills works. And for this, we're going to take an example of our support engineer, Bob. So let's take the example of Bob. Bob is an IT specialist who is in a group which only focuses on Windows Server. At the moment, the only tickets Bob gets to work on are tickets for Windows Server. But Bob wants to upskill. And actually, he already has additional skills and knowledge, in particular, Power BI. And Bob wants to do more. Bob already helps his own network. He already wants to expand his Power BI knowledge. So he wants to be able to do more than he does now. We can understand how Bob spends his time still. So we can understand that he still looks at the critical Windows Server issues he needs to deal with. And yet he can do more Power BI. So Bob is more happy because he gets to do a little bit of Power BI as well as his job. Bob still has to adhere to his Windows Server metric. So we're not taking away Bob's core job function. We're just allowing him to also help people on Power BI. And everybody, not just Bob's network, benefits. So an end user has a Power BI issue, but maybe that team is overstretched or it's a new product and we haven't upskilled the team yet. Doesn't matter. We've got resources we can already use because we're going to allow Bob to collaborate on those aside from his core job. And Bob's knowledge can then be reused for knowledge management. Bob could write a knowledge article, for example, of how to extend a Power BI report. Bob can do that while he's still adhering to his Windows Server metrics, but what we're getting as a business is the additional input from Bob and a knowledge article that we wouldn't have had. But yet we're not bringing in more staff to do this. We're just leveraging more skills from our existing staff members. Collaboration is already part of the way we work. During COVID, our use of collaboration has increased massively, and it's the best opportunity we've had to leverage this type of change without causing disruption to the business and the service, because we've had to. And channels are now readily available for us to use, and users are already familiar with them. We've had to operate more data sharing over more channels to continue to support the business. And companies like Microsoft have invested massively in this, from the new Viva platform to understand what we do every day, to the ability to look at who we collaborate with and why and how, to be able to allow us to focus, but also to allow us to share our knowledge and expand on what we know. And some of the tools that you'll be familiar with inside Teams are already doing this, but we can leverage this in an IT context to allow us to do more. So now let's look at another case study to outline where customers are already doing this. Our customers are already doing this. So let's take as an example a major consumer goods company. And this is a real world example where a company has pivoted the way service management is being delivered. In this particular organization, they started with HR before moving to finance. So they took all the skills they had within their organization and they blended them into one team. Outsourced teams and in-source teams worked side by side, all part of one centralized skills pool. And once that had been put in place for HR and finance, they moved to IT. Now, seemingly, IT was considered a larger challenge. And as we've mentioned, very little history of centralized skills model exists within IT. However, again, they started by blending the teams. They started by closing the gap between outsource and in-source. And they focused on the skills that each area brings, not a group or an assignment rule. The next stage was to change the input channel. So to move away from the phone and move to channels which actively encourage collaboration and self-service. Single central portal for all services, the same delivery mechanism. Knowledge hubs, services delivered quickly. And the latter is key for end user buy-in. If you're going to take the phone away, you need to give something back. They did this by bringing in massive automation. Don't use the phone and you'll get what you want straight away. It's the carrot before the stick. And the whole idea was to give every employee 1 hour back in waiting or outages or not being able to work because of an IT issue. It was a really simple metric, but one everybody can understand and buy into. The focus was then on IT to innovate and bring more to the business, allowing IT to start proactively helping the business, bringing a closer community. Not here's IT, they serve the business. IT is part of the business, with the goal of push towards the self-healing ideal of proactive assistance for users. And this is just one example. We're also working right now with a financial institution where we're starting to bring in the same innovation. We're starting to look at steps on that journey, bringing in huge automation, bringing in more collaboration, making change and the risk around that closer, integrating DevOps as more part of that business, making IT just part of the organization and not seen as a separate entity. So where do we bring this in terms of conclusion? First of all, this isn't new, okay? This is now. This is things that we can already do. And as we discussed, this is an approach which can be adopted. Yes, it needs corporate change, but we need to look at new ways to continue to drive down the cost of IT and not at the expense of user experience. COVID has forced this upon us, accelerating the thinking of collaborative working, from the individual to the collaborative, giving us the opportunity to expand our skill sets. Clients are already starting to take this on board, and you can take steps to bring this in incrementally with benefit on each step of the way. It's all about those short sprints in order to complete the marathon. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation today and that you found some elements of it useful. And I'm more than aware that that massive step change we spoke about at the end is going to be difficult for some organizations, but it's all about those little steps, and hopefully everybody has been able to take something away. And thank you very much for listening.